It's 16 days left until the American people go to the polls to vote for the next president of the United States of America. After 4 years of President Trump, the national polls show that they've simply had enough. And Joe Biden is up by as much as 13 points. But others remember 2016 and say, don't take this for granted. But do voters feel safe at the polls? And will their vote count? Voter intimidation, guns at polls, schemes to kidnap elected officials, ballots being disqualified and thrown in the dumpster have some worried about this election. This is State of the Water, and I'm your host, award-winning Dr. Eric Claville. We want you to call in to talk about the vote. Have you voted? How do you plan to vote? And who are you voting for? And why? And do you believe that your vote will count? Should guns be held and had at the polls? We want to know what you think. 757-823-9110. But before we do so, we have with us Delegate Cliff Hayes, Virginia House of Delegate member, representing the 77th District in Chesapeake and NSU alum, to talk about these and important issues. Delegate Hayes, good to have you again on State of the Water.
Dr. Claville, it's always a pleasure to be able to be on State of the Water and do anything when it comes to Norfolk State University in terms of support. And just excited that here we are on the cusp of another presidential election. And we just need to do all we can in this election or I can't even say in this election season. Never has it been as easy as it is to vote in the Commonwealth of Virginia as it is this year,
right.
To be able to do so because of the General Assembly and its makeup, and if nothing else, with all of the measures that we've been able to get passed in this year because of the flex and fortitude, perseverance, strength of the Virginia Legislative Black Caucus, as well as the Democratic Party, in which I'm a part of. We've been able to flip a whole lot of legislation and turn over a whole lot of rocks throughout the state code to find where there is oppressive measures and to begin working to reverse all of those situations.
Delegate Hayes, look, I thank you for joining us on this particular session because this is our October voter registration, October get out to vote. It's about the presidential election, but not just presidential election, but it's about the other items on the ballot, what we call the lower ballot initiatives and individuals who are going to be elected in the local area. So just from your perspective, I mean, you've served on the city council, you're in the state legislature now representing the 77th District. How important from your perspective is this election, not just nationally, but also for the Commonwealth?
We hear often when we have these elections that this is the most important election of our lifetimes. We've heard that phrase before. But I definitely want to mention that this is, I believe, the most important election of our lifetimes because we have here in the Commonwealth, as we stand at a posture protecting the fact that we've been able to expand Medicaid and provide health care to individuals. I think now the number is an additional 450,000 people.
Wow.
That would not have been able to get access to quality, affordable health care in this Commonwealth were it not for the ACA. And we've been able to do so here in the Commonwealth, but that's on the ballot because if you are not careful, the ACA can be overturned. Then also that's going to trickle down to the fact that we've been able to provide health care for individuals here in the Commonwealth that would otherwise not be able to have it. What's on the ballot is the fact that we have people who have supported HBCUs over the years, and we want to allow that funding support to not only continue, but to grow it. And we know through certain individuals, I know that will not only continue but grow. And so when it comes to our K-12 education, when it comes to making sure that all Virginians will be able to receive a quality, equitable education and funding for so, we want to make sure that that is protected and that that access continues to grow rather than be rolled back. And we all know, I know what these signals that we hear in the air about making America great again. Some folks just want to roll things back.
That's right.
To the 60s, 40s, 30s, etc. Stuff that they remember when they read in their elementary school books. They want to bring it back to that time. But we're here to say not this time. Not this time. And so when it comes to this election also, we need to make sure that there's a constitutional amendment that's on the ballot that I believe, as one who, as you mentioned, attended Norfolk State, I actually happen to have been a part of that mighty Spartan baseball team that won 3 championships while we were there. But one of the things we always had to watch out for, and I think hitting was a forte of mine, but the way you become a good hitter is you keep your eye on the ball. No matter what else is happening, no matter what is being yelled from the stands, no matter what wind up the pitcher has, maybe the pitcher has a high leg kick, maybe he wants to hide the ball in his glove and behind his back and then all of a sudden release. But we're not going to fall for any of those distractions and tactics. We're going to keep our eye on the ball and to make sure that we go to the polls and not only go there, but go in record numbers to cast our votes, because Election Day, as I said, this year, because of the General Assembly, we've made elections easier than ever here in the Commonwealth. So Election Day is a holiday this year.
Right.
Folks can get to the polls and no longer have to worry about rushing on your way to work and not be late for work, or when you get off from work, run inside the election poll before they slam the door in your face. Well, now it's a holiday here in the Commonwealth.
That's right.
And so we're asking you to take advantage of the fact that early voting is in the Commonwealth for the first time 45 days early. And I certainly hope most of who's listening have already voted. But the many who haven't, we're asking you to get out there early before the 31st of October and cast your vote.
Now, Delegate Hayes, you mentioned there are many ways because of the General Assembly and the work that you guys have done since becoming the majority have created more ways to vote, make it easier. What are some of those ways that we've created to vote, and how would you urge individuals to get out there to vote?
Well, as I mentioned before, a couple of ways of the fact that we made it easier because Election Day is a holiday, and then we have early voting 45 days prior to the election. But also, when you go to the polls, for whatever reason, if anybody tries to tell you that you're not on the books, they can't find your name, etc., do not walk away. Ask for a provisional ballot. Still cast your vote. Are you allowed to cast a provisional ballot?
Yes.
And then they can verify later if they're saying that there's some question about that. When you locally in the city of Chesapeake, I'll just say we're the 77th House District that I represent. The city has created these places to cast your vote early in all of the libraries, with the exception of the Dr. Clarence Cuffey Library and Community Center, because that building is under renovation right now.
Right.
But you can go to any one of the libraries, or you can actually show up on Cedar Road to the registrar's office and cast your vote in person. So please, please, please take advantage of that opportunity. And then, if for some reason you can't make it there before the 31st of October, November the 3rd is the actual election day. And we're asking you in record numbers to show up there as well on November the 3rd, if you haven't already early voted.
You know, one thing I want to bring out as well is that the Hampton Roads Transit is not charging any fares on Election Day. So that means you can get on the bus if you don't have a ride or you can't get to the polls. You're not going to be charged not one dime. So that's, again, we're making opportunities for people to get out there and vote. You know, really no excuse, right?
That is beautiful. That's a beautiful thing right there. So no excuses, no reasons why you shouldn't be able to get to the poll and vote on Election Day. We've also been working on this process of trying to make it so that anyone who has felonies, that we are able to restore your rights. Hit a snag in special session here as we've fought a number of criminal justice reform measures as well as police accountability measures. But one of the things that we're continuing to work on is to make sure that expungements become a reality here in the Commonwealth of Virginia. In Virginia, did you know that you could have created a crime or something, an offense, over 30-something years? I'm talking a real example in someone's life that reached out for assistance 35 years ago for writing a bad check and so forth, end up with that situation on their record, had a felony, once they took care of the situation, got their rights back. So now they can actually vote and serve on juries, etc. The problem is, in Virginia, we do not have expungement. And so on that individual's record, they still have this situation on their record.
Wow.
We think it's important in Virginia that we are able to have automatic expungements. Once you've done your time, you've satisfied the corrective action, that you are able to move on with your life, and that it shouldn't be hanging over your head. You no longer can get certain jobs, etc., so that you can thrive. Unfortunately, in some communities, some of these oppressive tactics and measures end up building a wall around people so that they are forever in a vicious cycle spiraling downward. Yeah. But we want to be able to not only give people a second chance, but to give them sound footing where they can thrive just like everybody else. Some people just happen to have the resources.
Right.
And they're able to pay and work themselves for protection legally, that they don't end up in those circumstances. But we want to make it that everyone is able to thrive in this Commonwealth of Virginia.
You know,
so go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I'm going to say, and listeners, to find out more about the states where felons' rights can be restored, you can go to procon.org. That's procon.org under felony voting, and it shows every state where you could permanently lose your right to vote, no matter what you've done in life, and even if you paid your debt to society. But we're in Virginia was one of those. But again, as you stated, the work that you guys have done, Delegate Hayes, in the legislature have pushed, for this restoration of rights, starting under Governor McCullough, on down with Governor Northam and also the House, and then now to ensure that there is expungement of your record so you can live a fuller life and really contribute, in society. So hats off to you for doing that, and we need more individuals like yourself representing us here in the Commonwealth.
Thank you so much.
Now, I want to ask you, this is a special session, and we know we had a historic session at the beginning of the year. Of course, we had a lot of, for the first time, women in top post positions in the House and also throughout the Assembly. But also there was some historic funding for HBCUs. But we had to come back because of coronavirus, and it caught everybody off guard in the whole world. What's a few pieces of legislation or things that you want us to know more about that's taking place in the special session now?
Well, in this special session, as I mentioned before, so much to deal with criminal justice reform. And as you know, police reform is just as important as well as we talk about coming off the heels and the cusp of a tragedy before the world. Now, in the black community, we've seen this play out many times over, where someone's life is taken,
wow.
And then, it's the word of the individual versus the police, and no one knows what exactly happened. Well, now with the advent of cell phones that record, we're seeing a number of situations via social media where folks are unable to suppress the evidence, if you will. Within minutes, the whole world knows if there has been some type of tragedy and police brutality. Example after example, week after week. And so coming off the case of the situation of Brother George Floyd, where this officer, for 8 minutes and 46 seconds, kneeled on his airway and stared into the camera of the citizen recording, pretty much, I would dare say, with a sense of no concern.
Yeah.
Just evil and cruelness.
Defiance.
Defiance, and
as if he has done it before. He did
there you go.
He did it so cavalier.
And so no one could question with that evidence whether or not that was wrong, right? No one. I mean, thank goodness it wasn't just a picture, because we'll be sitting here trying to guess what actually happened. Well, that was a video where we could see that man, grown man, crying for his mother.
Yes.
His deceased mother, I might add.
Yes.
So imagine the anguish and amount of pain that brother was feeling. And yet, no charges, just business as usual, if you will. We'll just let the internal affairs handle the investigation, or the local Commonwealth's attorney deal with it. Well, not this time. In the Commonwealth of Virginia, we have just passed legislation, House and Senate, on its way to the governor for signature, to say that in cases of police misconduct, it has to be investigated by a third party. So no more just sending it to the internal affairs of your department. You can do that if you'd like. And maybe because someone else, a third party, is going to investigate as well, that might help you release all of the information. Right. I'm reminded that even I think it goes back to 2000, right in North. Brother Raymond Chandler, I believe was his name, was stopped for having a tail light out in his car.
Right.
And ended up dying on the sidewalk. And the question was, well, what happened? And folks talked about, well, it was the anxiety that he had of being arrested and confined. It was the fact that he had high blood pressure and hypertension and the stress of being arrested. You know, he had a cardiac arrest and under the anxiety, and he died of asphyxiation as well by lying on his belly.
Right.
So everybody else's fault except for the individuals who were there.
That's right. That's right.
Well, I wonder if this would have been, you know, the conclusion of the story with Brother Floyd had it not been recorded.
You know, you mentioned a very important point, because hats off to, and I've said this before on this show and others, hats off to those private citizens that stood there with those cameras and challenging the officers to help. And the officers, some of them tried to, but the ultimate conclusion was it was to no avail.
Well, in the code now, in this special session, another measure that is passed and on its way to, sitting on the governor's desk waiting for him to sign. If you are an officer and you are witnessing misconduct and you do nothing because you want to protect your buddy and your coworker or whatever, under the auspices of them sitting here doing something egregious, guess what? Now you will be facing jail time yourself. So that's the law waiting to be signed by the governor now, that has already passed the House, already passed the Senate. And I mean, we're trying to overturn this stuff in the Commonwealth, you know, over I don't know how many decades of nuances of things in the code that makes it difficult. But we're about transparency when it comes to these things, and you know, no more. We're getting threatened by folks saying, "Well, man, we're not going to be able to hire anybody now." Well, the truth is, if we're worried about folks participating in the fashion that I just described,
right,
they ought not be in the line of work in the first place.
Yeah.
There's something wrong with the fact that we address this as public safety. But I question whether or not Brother Floyd was safe.
That's right.
You know, you're administering public safety? Come on.
But, you know, is that type of passion that has driven the world to understand the oppression, the suppression, discrimination at the hands of authority that black people experience across the world. And because of that video, you know, he didn't die in vain, because Black Lives Matter movement has become a movement across not just Minnesota, not just Minneapolis, not just the Northeast or South, but across the world. And it's individuals like yourself and others that have stood up in legislatures and government, in popular culture, on their jobs, and just everyday citizens. They've taken to the streets to say, hey, enough is enough. And to hold everyone accountable. Now, again, is about the common good, right? These United States of America. So is making sure that we have legislation on the books, making sure we have people that have courage and that can stand up and say, listen, stand up for those that can't stand up for themselves, and right is right and wrong is wrong. And we have a justice system that can help to sort it all out. But again, those are very, very important issues that we must continue to put to the forefront. But, you know, we're coming close to the end of our discussion. And I want to ask you, like I want to ask all the callers, as a matter of fact, caller 757-823-9110, 757-823-9110. we're here talking about the importance of voting, voter intimidation, and whether your vote will count, and have you voted, and who are you voting for and why. So we have Delegate Cliff Hayes here. I'm going to ask you, we talked about the importance of voting, the important work that you're doing for the Commonwealth and in District 77. So who have you voted, first of all, and who are you supporting?
I have voted. I couldn't wait to vote. I was sitting there or standing there on the tiptoes of anticipation, waiting for September the 18th, which was the beginning of early voting here in the Commonwealth. And I voted for someone who was proven themselves already with a commitment to HBCUs, that is in Joe Biden for president. I can recall back in 2015 as a part of the President Obama's administration, the Vice President Biden stopping by Norfolk State University, dropping off a cool $25 million for cybersecurity for not only Norfolk State but HBCUs, a specific program for HBCUs working along with Norfolk State to help build those skill sets so that the graduates of our HBCUs will have a pathway towards, I believe, a career that is here to stay. When it comes to Vice President, obviously on the ticket with him, I want you to cast your vote, and I'll be casting my vote for Kamala Harris, a product of a fellow HBCU in Howard University, sister of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. I'm a member of the Divine Nine. We know how hard the Divine Nine works in the community and on our behalf. And so we know to the core who it is in this sister, Kamala Harris. When it comes to the Senate, I've voted for Mark Warner. I've known him as a friend and brother, been working a long time in the trenches, working on behalf of the black community, getting things done. When it comes to the congressional seats, Elaine Loria has been a champion and a friend. Congressman Bobby Scott, certainly for a long time been a dear friend of our community, and as well as Congressman Don McEachin. You know, obviously I couldn't vote for Congressman McEachin or Loria because I don't live in those districts, but they are friends of mine. And I cast my vote for Congressman Bobby Scott as well. So all up and down that ballot, we've been able to vote for our friends. You know, I was at a church this morning speaking to them, and as I spoke via stream to them, I encouraged them, as my mother would do, to never bring anybody to our house that wasn't a friend, that would be dangerous to us. In other words, we had to leave them out at the edge of the driveway. My mother and father said, don't bring them up on this porch. So our friends we were allowed to bring up on the porch. And so I would never bring names or individuals to you that would be harmful to our community, to the black community. And so the names that I'm bringing to you, I consider them friends and supporters as well as workers in the vineyard that will create a pathway for a brighter future for black citizens in this Commonwealth and in this nation. And so with that, those are the folks that I voted for and the reasons why.
Delegate Cliff Hayes, Virginia House Delegate member representing the 77 District in Chesapeake and NSU alum. Thank you so much for being on Stay of the Water. You're a great supporter of your institution, your alma mater, great supporter of the Center for African American Public Policy, and also Stay of the Water, and a great supporter of the Commonwealth. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us. Be blessed.
Same to you. This is Stay the Water, and I'm your host, award-winning Dr. Eric Claville. And we've just had Delegate Cliff Hayes talk to us about the importance of voting. But we're here to talk about voting ourselves. 757-823-9110. This is election 2020, and we're 16 days out until we choose the next president of these United States of America. But some people feel that their vote won't be counted. And also, they don't feel safe at the polls. Voter intimidation, ballots found in the dumpster, and some absentee ballots are not being counted because of a signature. What do you feel about that? Have you voted? Who are you voting for and why? This is Stay the Water. We want to hear from you. Call in at 757-823-9110. That's 757-823-9110. You know, before we continue on, I want to talk about, again, the importance of voting. Get out and vote. We've never made it easier for individuals to vote. Delegate Hayes, he's talked about how the work that they've done in the state legislature to get out there so you could mail in your ballots, request an absentee ballot, you could early vote. Even if you're not found on the voting records, you can cast a provisional ballot. It's never been easier to get out and vote. And this is part of our democracy, part of our getting the word out, part of letting your voice be heard. You know, many times in our history, we've experienced voter suppression, voter intimidation. You know, as African Americans, we've gone through the suppression of Jim Crow, you know, the grandfather clause, intimidation at the polls by the Ku Klux Klan and others, literacy tests, guessing how many jelly beans in a jar, you know, just all types of foolishness just to be able to cast your vote. And I told someone the other day, I said, think about it. If the vote was not that important, why would laws be created to suppress the vote of African Americans so much? The power of voting in people into office, whether it be the school board, the city council, on commissions, state in our state assembly, or even in the highest office of the land. These individuals can get things done for you. They can pass laws that help to give you a better opportunity to operate in these United States of America. Delegate Hayes talked about the restoring the rights of felons. Someone over 30 years ago just wrote one bad check. They paid their debt to society, but still they could not operate in the state fully. But because of the efforts of the people that we put in office, now that person's able to do that. But now you can get out again. Election day is November 3rd. You can request your absentee ballot. It has to be received, the request itself, by October 23rd. You can also then return it by mail. It has to be postmarked by November 3rd. You could vote early from September 18th to October 31st. And you could vote down at your local clerk of court or voter registration office in your city. Now, of course, the deadline to register to vote has passed. It passed on October 15, and of course, the state extended it because of the power outage that we experienced for that one day. So it was extended a couple of days to October 15. But if you postmark your request to register to vote by October 15, then you're eligible to vote. So get out there and vote. Matter of fact, Hampton Roads Transit, they're not charging fare for that day for you to go out to vote. So if you don't have a ride, you know, you can utilize our bus system. You can get out on election day and vote. But we encourage everyone, if you can, early vote. If you can, absentee vote. If you're not sure if you're on the records, cast your provisional ballot. All these things are available for you to get out to vote. So don't waste this opportunity. Make sure that your voice is heard. But let's talk about how individuals are trying to stop you from voting. Let's look at voter intimidation first. Now, here in Fairfax County, several weeks ago, you had a caravan during early voting time, a caravan of Trump supporters that drove to the early voting location in that particular county. And they were yelling, they were intimidating, purposefully intimidating individuals that were going into the polls to vote. And this effort was led by the chair of the Republican Party in that particular area. Individuals with their, of course, they have the right to have whatever sign they want to have. They have the right to support whoever they want to support. But individuals did not feel safe going into the polls, and some even asked for escorts coming out. Some said that these individuals were exercising their First Amendment right of peacefully assembling and going out and supporting the person that they're supporting. Others were saying that they were being intimidated. What do you think? Do you feel that you should be able to go into a place to vote without all the ruckus and all those things that are happening on the outside? Or do you support someone out there yelling certain things to you? Maybe some obscenities, maybe not. But maybe just the very presence of these individuals and so many at one time makes you a little nervous. Are they abridging your right to vote? But let's take it a step further. What about guns? Do you think individuals should be able to bring guns to the polling stations? Well, just recently, this past week, the NAACP of Hampton, in the city of Hampton, wrote a letter and asked for the city council to draft an ordinance and vote on it in order to ban guns at polling stations that are non-governmental. So in places that are not the governmental building or the like. In other words, community centers, those places that are under government control, but not actually in a governmental building. But not only that, but then after that, several days later, you had a group of individuals, both black and white, that actually assembled in front of the police station in Newport News to protest for their right to have their gun with them when they go to the polls in other areas. I'm telling you, these are interesting times that we're living in. Do you believe that individuals should go to the polls with their guns? You're going to go cast a vote. Do you really need to carry a gun with you? Do you really need a gun holster on you? And if you're carrying a gun to the polls, why are you doing it? We want to hear from you. Do you believe guns should be available, or do you believe that they should not? 757-823-9110. That's 757-823-9110. But others believe that there's also other tactics in order to stop votes from counting. Let's take a look at absentee ballots and mail-in ballots. Now, just recently, there have been reports of hundreds of ballots in various states, such as Kentucky, that have been found in the dumpster. These are ballots that were thrown away. Ballots that were requested but never came in. Now, is this abridging your right to vote? Absolutely. But we want to hear from you. We have a caller. Caller, you're on Stay in the Water. What's on your mind?
Hi, I was just wanting to comment on the bringing the guns to the polls to vote, or having guns at polls during voting.
Yes. Do you believe that guns should be there, or do you believe that individuals should leave their guns at home?
I believe they have the right. If they have the right to carry their guns, they should be able to carry their guns. I think we need to look at this thing a little bit differently. If you give me about a minute, is just to say people of color have to stop looking at themselves as the victim in terms of how we look at guns and people that are militias and protesting. Wear your gun. They have the right to wear their gun. You have the right to wear your gun. And we often look at ourselves in the victim standpoint of they're intimidating us. Well, if we put ourselves in a position not to be intimidated by exercising our rights, then we sort of level the playing field, so to say. We need this, bottom line, stop looking at ourselves as victims and exercise your right to carry your gun. You're primarily responsible for your protection, the protection of your family. Your Second Amendment right guarantees you that as well. But we just look at it as people of color have that right, and we don't, but we do.
Right. So caller, let me ask you this question. Mm-hmm. With the history that we have as African Americans of voter intimidation and people actually being killed just to go vote, okay?
Yes.
Do you think that everyone being able to carry their guns with them is really the answer to this particular situation, given the political environment that we're in and the divisiveness of our nation and our president sending these dog whistles and sometimes a bullhorn, right, to these white supremacist groups. Do you think that everybody having guns is the best way to go, or maybe everyone just leave their guns at home just to go vote? Then you can put them back on if you want.
And so my answer is exercise your right to carry a gun to the polls or wherever you're legally able to carry them. So it's the bully syndrome that until you level the playing field, then you're always going to be intimidated. You're always going to be bullied. And so they feel empowered and emboldened because they have something that you don't have. Now, once you level the playing field, now you see the true colors of most people, which is that the majority of them are cowards, right? They're hiding behind their ability to have guns and different rights and history even on their side to bully and intimidate. And until we look at it from the standpoint of we've got to be proactive, not reactive and not passive in terms of our presence and in terms of our desire to not be intimidated. No one goes and wears a gun with the intention of getting into a gunfight or a shootout. The gun is there for your protection. And I think even with our history, the reason that history existed is because for the predominant part of it, we were always unarmed against people that were armed, whether it was police, whether it was with dogs, whether it was with militia and KKK. And until we exercise our right and hold them accountable to our right, to have the same rights and gun principles that our non-colored counterparts have, then things are going to be the same. But we really have got to change our mindset in terms of we're being bullied, we're being intimidated, and if they stand out there with signs, we can't say, well, they've got signs and they're louder than us. No, bring your sign. They've got guns and it's their right. Well, bring your gun, and now watch the conversation change, because the other way doesn't work. Now, it is a way, but historically, if you look at it, it just hasn't worked.
Thank you, caller. And I'll ask you one last question. Have you voted?
I have not voted. I'm going to vote on Election Day. It's funny. I don't trust my vote sitting anywhere until November 3rd. Even, I'm not talking about mail-in or absentee. I'm even talking electronically. Where is this vote sitting? I know they say it's safe. I am waiting till November 3rd, and I will be out at 5:30 for the polls to open at 6 a.m. I always vote. I've been a registered voter. I'm a Second Amendment advocate. I'm non-politically aligned with Democrat or Republican because there's no perfect candidate. I want to exercise my rights across the board, and I'm not going to allow any group to intimidate me because they choose to use the system against me. No, I'm going to exercise and use the system for me as well.
Thank you so much, caller, for calling State of the Water.
Thank you for having me.
Well, again, this is what this show is for, to talk about these important issues, to get all sides of it. But do you agree? Should individuals have those guns at the polls with them, or should they leave them at home? Everyone doesn't have a gun. Everyone doesn't have a rifle. Everyone doesn't have an automatic weapon. So would someone seeing individuals who are outside in bulletproof vests with military gear, would they be more apt to go into the poll and say, hey, good morning, how are you? Or would they be more apt to say, you know what, I don't really feel safe with people around here? And what about those who are immigrants? The president, unfortunately, in the very beginning of his election term in 2016, 2017, he talked about people coming over the border from the South. He talked about Hispanics. And, of course, there was this big push of militias going down to the border and, quote, unquote, helping out, border agents. And now there is social media and misinformation out there that they're going to have ICE at different polling stations. Again, is this to intimidate individuals coming to vote who are Hispanic heritage? Is this really needed? As a matter of fact, a story just came out today where police departments are now discussing these various threats to the local polls, right? They're discussing possible civil unrest at the polls because of this misinformation that's out there, and because of the reality that there are some people who believe that these guns, they should have these guns at the polls. Let's take a look at what's taken place in Michigan and also here in Virginia just last week. The FBI arrested and charged 13 people so far that were recruited, went through exercises, military exercises, in order to storm the Capitol of Michigan and kidnap the governor, put her on trial, and execute her. I mean, these are things that people are actually planning to do, okay? But not just the governor of Michigan, but also reports came down that they were trying to do the same thing to the governor here in Virginia. So I don't think this is something that we should take lightly. I think this is something that's very serious, something that we should take note of, that there are people out there that want to intimidate individuals, that want to intimidate citizens of this country, that don't think the way they think, in order to stop them from exercising their right to vote. But as the caller said, we should be bold, go out and vote. Be bold, go out and live our lives. But we also have to be safe as well, because we have to be able to protect those that cannot protect themselves. So what are your thoughts about the growing militias and the white supremacist groups that we have in this country? What are your thoughts about the president giving dog whistles and using the bullhorn to the group called the Proud Boys, where he told them to stand down and stand by, when it comes to the voting situation on Election Day? Do you think that he was telling them in order to go out and, hey, stand by, there's going to be a peaceful election? Or is he telling them to go out and intimidate others that are trying to go vote? 757-823-9110. 757-823-9110. But I also want to talk about the ballots. Again, we mentioned the ballots that were found in the dumpster in Kentucky, those ballots that were found in other dumpsters and mail not delivered around the country. This is very disconcerting. This is very concerning regarding the right to vote. There are individuals that want to abridge our right to vote. There are individuals that want to stop us from voting. But as African Americans, this is nothing new to us. We've seen this before. We've seen this play out before. And that's why it's so important that we have representatives in our state houses, representatives in our local city council that understand these issues. And we have citizens that are going to them saying, listen, we want to protect our right to vote. We want to protect our citizens to go out and exercise their right. Because it's very important, because they're our representatives. And if we don't speak up, if we don't go to them, then our voices will not be heard. But I want to take a look at our neighbor to the south, North Carolina. This report just released just last month. It says North Carolina is already rejecting black voters' mail-in ballots more than white voters. As a matter of fact, it shows that as of September 17th, black voter ballots were rejected more than 4 times the rate of white voters, according to the state's numbers. And this is according to the voter registration numbers and voter election numbers in the state of North Carolina. It say that black voters have mailed in at that time period of September 17th, 13,747 ballots, with 742 rejected, or 4.7%. In like manner, white voters cast 60,954 mail-in ballots at that time period, with only 681 rejected, or 1.1%. And not only that, but 434 ballots that were cast by white voters and 127 ballots cast by black voters were marked being what they call spoiled. In other words, this literally means that there's something as simple as the voter informing the election office that the address that they requested a ballot is wrong or something of that nature. But these are, and this is according to 538. It's a news outlet that covers politics. And also these statistics came from the North Carolina State Election Office. But think about that. In North Carolina right now, as of literally 1 month ago, black ballots were being rejected at 4 times the rate of white voters. Is this just something that's happening, or a coincidence, or is this voter intimidation? Is this voter suppression? The numbers are there. And again, these are the state numbers. So what can we do about this? And a lot of these ballots, they said that individuals, unless the voter lets the commission know or follows up on their ballot to see if it was actually counted, then these ballots just simply go in the trash or they're not counted. This is very concerning, especially with the Voting Rights Act, the pre-clearance portion of it not renewed. We saw states, including Virginia, and North Carolina was one of them. Texas was another, where there were challenges and provisions written in the law in these states that were led at the time by Republican houses to limit the rights of African-American voters, to limit the access to the polls, especially in North Carolina, where in one county, there were 15 polling stations and 16, and they put it down to, I think, 1 at that particular time. So it's limiting your access. It's limiting to ensure that your ballot is counted. But even now, the only remedy that's available to these individuals in states such as these is a lawsuit filed after the fact. But after the fact, the individuals will be elected. They'll be in office. And how long will this process take in the legal system? But again, this is the reason why we have to go out and ensure that voters' votes are counted. We have to ensure that we have our legislators, our city council members in office representing us in order to take these issues, which are very serious, these very serious issues, to the people, create laws and policies to make sure that our votes are counted. 757-823-9110. 757-823-9110. Have you voted yet? And who have you voted for and why? And how have you voted? Was it early ballot? Did you mail in your ballot? Or do you plan on voting on Election Day? 757-823-9110. We want to hear from you. But I want to go back to the voter intimidation. With voter intimidation, we have issues where individuals are coming with their guns. We have issues where individuals are outside yelling, "Make America Great Again," and other things in order to stop individuals from voting. Is this really necessary? This is our democracy. Democracy is our most tenuous form of government. But we have a caller. Caller, you're on State of the Water. What's on your mind?
Yes. How you doing today?
Good. Can you turn your radio down just a little?
Yeah,
for
I
us?
just got it down.
Yes, sir. What's on your mind today?
Well, I just wanted to call, man. It's concerning. Everything that's going on. I mean, this moment in time, it's like we've gone partially. We got technology of the 21st century, and then we got a president from the Stone Ages. And this is, it feels like everything is being constructed to keep this guy in office. It's concerning. I mean, we need to. I don't know what the answer is, honestly. I mean, we got the Postal Service that, I've heard that things going on very strange there. You got these ballots that's being found in dumpsters, and I don't know what the answer or the solution is.
Yeah. So, caller, the question that I have for you is, have you voted yet? And if you have voted,
I have my ballot, my absentee ballot, and I haven't dropped it off at the drop box, but that's what I intend to do.
Yes. Because
I've been holding it because I've decided not to put it in the mail because of some of the things that I've been hearing. So there is a drop box. And one thing I like about the ballots that we have, at least in this part of Virginia, I live in Chesapeake,
yes, that
there's a tracking number on it.
That's right.
So there is a way to track that ballot and to see where it's moving through the chain. So that's one thing I think is valuable. I think that's one thing that needs to be added everywhere if it's not.
Well, voters, it's individuals like yourself, that see these issues, that are raising them, whether it be on this radio station or talking with your elected officials, that's going to keep our democracy going and keep it safe. Because like you said, there are efforts to keep certain aspects of our country not running like it's supposed to run. But it's up to us, the citizens, to engage and ensure that we keep it going.
Absolutely. And I appreciate the work you're doing over there, too, as well. We need your voice and voices like yours out speaking to the public. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you. Well, listeners, if you haven't voted yet, get out there and vote. Again, you have many ways that you can vote. Thanks to our special guest today, Delegate Claville Hayes, representing the 77th District in Chesapeake, and NSU alum, and others working with him in the Virginia Legislative Black Caucus and also in the Virginia Legislature, ensuring that our vote is protected, ensuring that our rights are protected, and ensuring that we have a stake and a voice in our democracy. This is our Commonwealth. This is our local area. This is our city. This is our community. These are our schools. It's up to you, only you. Make your voice heard by going out to vote. But just not you go out to vote, but take someone with you. If you have a family member that hasn't registered to vote or hasn't requested their absentee ballot, help them register and get their absentee ballot, request it, and go and drop it off in the drop box. Or if you don't feel comfortable doing it, go inside and vote in your local area. And if you want to go out on election day, it's a holiday already. So make it a day where you take your family and friends with you to go out to the polls and then go vote. Because only your voice will be able to be heard on that day through your vote and put in the people that are representing you. Again, we thank you for listening. Stay in the water, where we bring policymakers, movers, and shakers to you to talk about issues important to you. I'm Dr. Eric Claville. We'll see you next Sunday.